I'll give you a brief introduction, and then I'll also introduce. I'm Nancy Carroll. I actually graduated from Beeson in, I think, 2008 with an MTS degree, which is a little, MDiv light, so only one language. And I worked at the Global Center for several years, and then in 2013, as I left, Gina had already been dreaming of Inspiro, and at that point in 2013 we formed a 501c3. So we joined forces with that. And on the little bench right there, that table, are just some little brochures that is a calendar of some of our activities and also a verse that's important to us. But I'll go through a brief explanation of Inspiro, and then we'll start with a few questions. And we love it being a small group so that you can ask questions as we proceed. But Inspiro is a compilation word that means it means God-breathed hope. Spero is hope in Latin, inspired hope. And what we desire to do, and I'm just going to read our mission statement because we tortured over it, so it's worthy of reading. So we seek to cultivate hope and meaning for artists, churches, and the people of Birmingham. We're local. It's not like we're going to franchise what we do. We are implicated for love's sake to our city. And so we care for our creatives, and we try to organize opportunities for them to share their gifts with our city. And we do that, we feel our foundational art form is hospitality. And through acts of radical hospitality, we are able to create a safe place and a bridge for people from different perspectives and cultures to gather together, especially in this time of so much division. Where's a safe place that people can gather together? And we believe that beauty matters, and so do those who create it. We believe that artists as well as pastors are often very isolated. So how do we help create community for them? And how do we help them connect with purpose and then connect back with the church? And so, because we believe artists and pastors are the ones that can help break through from our heads to our hearts the truths that we need to engage. Things that you can think of intellectually through music or through fiction or through different kinds of words or a piece of sculpture or art may suddenly make it come alive in your whole body. So that's where we are, and we want it to transform us as well as our city. One event we're having this evening reflects that. We call it Bridge Builders. We've had it for since 2015. And it's a way, another safe place where we can find out about the wounds of our city, Birmingham being a very complicated city. Our dear African American friends who are willing come together, and they tell their stories in a curious, respectful, humble setting so that we can absorb that, especially artists. Some artists have come to us and saying, I want to know more, but I don't know, and we give them a setting to do that. So Bishop Jim Lowe, who's the senior pastor at Guiding Light Church here in Birmingham, he survived the 16th Street Church bombing. He was there when it happened. So he's going to be speaking at Red Cat Coffee House in Pepper Place. So if you'd like to go, there's a few tickets. It's free, but we just have to manage numbers. You can just go on our Instagram, which is @inspiro.birmingham. So that's the biggest. If you want to keep looped in with us, that's how we do it. So I think the best way for us, as we talk about, from our perspective, the place and care and work of artists in the church, is for you to be exposed to two artists who are passionate about their work, passionate about Jesus, and love the church, and have had complicated relationships with the church. So as we do this, I want to introduce Gina Hurry, who is who's now posting on Instagram. No, Gina is a fine artist, and she founded Inspiro. Her heart for that, she'll explain that a bit. Allie B. Gorey is an actor, and she is the community engagement director for Red Mountain Theater, and she also teaches here at Samford. So they come from different disciplines, and then can also talk a little bit about it. So I want to field a few questions for them, and then we can engage with you as well. But first, I'd love to see how, and you all are artists here, so you'd have that same kind of question. But can you tell us the story, how you discovered your calling into creativity, and how that the church or the church staff then engaged you with your art form? So I'll just start with Allie B.
Allie B.
I honestly, I think as kids, right, we are inherently so creative. So I don't remember a time when I wasn't writing plays in my bedroom, or singing at the dinner table, or dancing in the yard. Like, I think that's always just been a part of me. I wrote chapter books. I had a librarian in school where I would write these books about moving to New York and being on Broadway, and the librarian would put a fake Medal of Honor on them and let kids check them out. So I remember things like that, right? Where I don't ever remember a time where creativity wasn't what got me out of bed in the morning. And I feel lucky enough that I've had mentors and friends and family nurture that. As far as in the church, really, it's been a little interesting because I feel like I've lived in a handful of different cities, and I grew up in Birmingham, went to an Episcopal church, moved to Nashville, went to a very different Episcopal church, and then moved to New York and started singing in churches in New York, leading worship. And it was wonderful, but I don't really feel like I landed at a church that understood how to nurture the whole artist until I ended up back in Birmingham, shockingly, and I'm at a church with Tyra right now, First Church. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how they do that later, but it really took me, I'm turning 30 in a month, so it's really now that I've just found a place that I feel like knows how to pour into an artist in a way that is not just general, but very specific, and allowing them to serve in a very specific way.
Wow. Yeah, I can't wait to hear more.
And also, maybe just the one thing I forgot to say, one other thing is she's an advocate for disabilities in the arts and pulling that back in, so you'll explain that a bit to us. So.
You want to say anything about that before I go?
I'll get there.
Okay. So much like Allie B, I cannot remember a time when I was not an artist, so if that resonates with you, I was also singing and dancing in my yard, but I was really a visual artist. I was also painting on the inside of my mother's closet with her lipstick when I was in diapers, and just doing all the things. But I think I'm so visual. Visual has always spoken to me, and so I grew up Southern Baptist in a very old historical church in Montgomery, Alabama. And so I think the thing that spoke to me of God's heart was the ceiling. Everything there was so ornately done, the artistry, the craftsmanship, the stained glass windows, that spoke to me of the value of beauty, I think, and God as beauty, and I think that I was seeing. And also, for all of us, but especially for artists, our stories probably also make things really messy, and creating a needy heart space for our church to love us and nurture us as artists. So when I came to that church, my dad had left, and so my mom and I started attending this church, and this became our home, and it was like our haven. And so I think for that too, for me, the church became sort of like a metaphor for heaven, and I already could see that, that this place would father me and shelter me and all of that. And so there was nothing for me as a child as an artist in the church or any acknowledgement of that, but every altar call my whole entire life, I was like, I'll go. So I always loved Jesus and wanted to respond to something, but Nancy and I spoke about this earlier. I always thought the answer was to be a missionary, and so I didn't feel that to be an artist was a way that I could serve God and respond to his beauty and love for me until much later. And so when I graduated from college, I went to Birmingham Southern. I remember crying on the porch of the college with my professor, and who was not a person of faith, and just saying, I don't know if I should be an artist or a missionary. He's like, you're a damn good artist. Why, you know? But he was kind of like, why would you be a missionary? And I'm like, well, because I want to respond to Jesus. And so I didn't have, I wasn't equipped with theology or a broader life world view to understand that I was exactly who I was supposed to be. I'm sorry, please, I'm a crier. I'm a crier. So all that to say, because I couldn't find, even though I knew I was meant to be an artist, there was not a clear path for someone who was not technologically advanced to, you know, work on computers, and I'm still not. But I chose a seminary path because I thought, well, as an artist, I do have a heart for theology. I do love God, and maybe this will help me. And so I couldn't really figure out what to do with seminary, and so I took a path to go to Nashville, where they offered seminary and training and discipleship, where I could actually work with students and do seminary classes at the same time. Long story short, in that time, I think I began to realize that it was okay to serve God as an artist, and the host family that kept me, Marty, who, you know, really nurtured me as an artist. And she had been a designer in California, and she was like, oh, no, God is so much bigger than the church, serving the church this narrow way. And so I got married, moved back. Long story short, God really directed my path back to my arts, because my husband and I had a lot of school debt to pay off. And people would buy my work, and that was really all I knew how to do, was paint. And so that's how we ate. And so anyway, little by little, and so I'm still painting, and we've been married 26 plus years, and I'm still making my living that way. So, and still love the church. So that's kind of, is that?
Yeah, and then
how the church,
how did, so you kind of said some people within the church engaged
Yeah.
well. I'd love you both to talk a little bit about some responses to you as artists in the church, like.
Yeah,
So
I
how-
will say, so I'm here in Birmingham and attend First Church downtown, First Methodist, and I actually did not join the church first. I was asked to have a job at the church, and I said, I love a job, I guess, saying, like, yes, I'll be a singer, and, you know, a side hustle, right? Just got to know the community and the music we sang. It was so different than music I had sung in church before. And I really said, you know what, if I'm going to be here in Birmingham, I'm not in New York anymore, I'm going to plug in and I'm going to get to know people. And I joked, I feel like every time my dad would check in on me, I was like, oh, I just had lunch with my pastor. And he was like, what? You know, like, that was just welcomed. And so what's really unique about being able to plug in there is not only have I had a chance to plug in the choir, but even on services like Good Friday, they're using actors to tell the story of Good Friday. There's another friend who's in the choir with us who's a watercolor artist. He painted an ornament that was given to every member of the church on Christmas.
Wow.
Right? I have chills thinking about it, because there are free tap classes at the church every Monday night. Like, it is so all inclusive of all of the arts, and I mean, and this is probably me giving you half of what they're doing. There was a Bible study at the museum that met on a Saturday series with one of our pastors. So I think a lot of artists have been shown radical love by that community, and so they have come in. And I think when you are shown love, you also want to give it so much in return. So that's what I've really found, and I don't know if that answers your question, but there's just so many ways I've found to plug in there, and it's honestly, and I've been to a lot of churches, and I was in a lot of churches in New York and Nashville, and there might have been like, yeah, you could sing a Sunday or two if you're lucky or whatever, but there weren't all of these inter and multidisciplinary artistic ways in, like I found here in Birmingham, and I think that's really important, because there's not just one way to be an artist, and a lot of artists are multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I think my experience would be like past and present. Maybe the past would take a long time to share about, but we were at the same church as a PCA church for about 22 years, and you know, it's a long story how we got there, but there was no arts program or opportunity or inroad, except you would see worship leader, musicians, playing.
And blank walls.
Blank walls.
Of course.
Yes, yes. And I personally, I mean, Nancy shared a little bit about how in Sparrow, which is the nonprofit that kind of came to be, that I felt like God was stirring just in, well, my heart and other people's hearts it was really around scripture based on the end of the story. Like if you look at the end of Revelations and you're seeing the New Jerusalem and all these things. And I just felt like God was bringing scripture alive for me personally as I sat in a church and I was looking at like a small, it didn't even feel like so much like a slice of what I was reading in Revelation. I thought, if this is where we're headed, like, are we not supposed to start now? You know, and so to me, I just had, I mean, we can call it Holy Spirit or imagination, but like I felt like something was really burning in me to go to the artists and creatives in our congregation and just say, don't let your gift die. Like people need your gift. People are dying and the world is dying and we need hope and to be reminded that, you know, there's a full life to live. And so many artists sitting in churches, y'all, I'm preaching to the choir, but they're sitting there and they don't have a way to serve unless you want to make a bulletin board, you know. And I think that was my experience growing up is, you know, they'd say, you're creative, could you do a bulletin board? Yeah, or cut this out. Yeah, name tags, or can you make a casserole, which I'm all about, all of serving in any way, except that I think
casserole.
our,
I'm just
our
kidding.
hearts are exploding to respond to the love of God, like you were saying, you know, and so I think the church, as far as it could, responded with gracious, like a gracious open door of, you know, what do you want to do? And what do you see? And I think there was an evolution of inviting artists to participate, you know, around themed, you know, bringing people together for art shows or different things. And Nancy had even helped me where we would sit with artists and help them meditate in scripture.
Like a Lectio Divina, that type of thing. So even non-believing artists can recognize the power of that. So
And then people would respond to that in their art form and bring that back to the church. And we definitely had systems for their own protection, you know, to curate what was presented and that kind of thing. But I think we went as far as we could go in that setting. I think, you know, because of systems that y'all are familiar with in churches and sensitivities and rules and committees and budgets and things, those things are hard. And that's why, I mean, I still really am passionate about serving in a church and wanting to encourage a pastor. But I think coming outside of the church has been such a blessing for us.
Yeah.
So when we talk about artists in the church, I'm really found most life and freedom outside the church, like celebrating and encouraging the bigger, broader church, not just one church, if that makes sense. And just because, and we understand guys in the church are limited with what they can do, and you know, it's a big world out there, and so.
And we found, we prayed about it and finally decided a parachurch organization for us would be better. But the gift that we didn't realize is that we could serve the larger church in different denominations. And one of our sweet spots is we have encouraged and tried to sustain senior pastors. So we have become a safe place for them to be vulnerable. We do like pastor artist dinners where 5 senior pastors from different denominations and 5 artists, they don't have to be believers, etc. They come together and we prepare them for the kind of questions that we'll ask, have a feast for them, and they get to go through what is most fruitful and frustrating in their callings. They start to understand each other and their view for the city, and it has been the most vulnerable, connecting place we found. So I think that issue of safety, of creating a place, a bridge almost for people to be able to do that. So, we have 1 or 2 more questions. But are there any things as we do this you can ask questions or something, or I'm going to ask them a few more questions, or we can wait till the end, whichever you prefer.
Do you have a location in a church where you have an office, or does one church sponsor you, or do you just have a home office, or where is your base? Like if I were an artist in Birmingham and I wanted to come
Yeah.
meet with you, good luck.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we went through that a lot. We have a wonderful board, and Ally's on our advisory council. So people are our building, and we borrow people's wonderful locations as we do that. We actually, we prayed and talked about, should we have a place? And at one point, one church was willing to give us a really cool location, and that ended up pandemic'd out. And but what we have found is, no, we don't have a physical location, and we are sponsored by several different churches sponsor us or sponsor specific activities. Like this next year, we're going to do a big thing around the 60th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail, and it's also the 60th anniversary of the bombing. Dr. Smith is going to come and participate, and we're going to bring other people in. So we're actually, right now, we have a group of 10 or 11 senior pastors from different denominations coming together to pray and have a vision. How do we respond differently to Dr. King's letter? Because it was really to white pastors. If you read that letter, he's in not gently calling out. I don't know if gently. I would have not been as diplomatically calling out. So anyways, I don't know if that answers your question, but so yeah, we did want a place, and that's.
From the beginning, that was the vision, that there would be a place, that people that we really trust have counseled us. So I think we just rest in the voices of our friends that we trust. So,
Yeah.
And there may be a time, but it's probably really frustrating for some people who want to connect in. And I've also felt like there are people that have wanted to use our name for their own street cred or whatever too. And we're probably, I think elusive is probably really good in a way though, because as far as relating to the fringe, if that makes sense, people who have been burned by the church, which we can all relate to, I feel like it's good that we're kind of hard to understand. And so I hate that we don't have a place and they can't just show up, but
it's also
It's
special
also-
to get to come to an experience or an event and just let it be that. Like to
Just
let
be okay
Inspira
with that.
be what is happening in that room, in that place, in that time, and being present with the artists and the pastors and the teachers who are very present, and just the beauty that is very present in every detail that Inspira puts together. I think that is something magic. Yes, elusive, where you're like, whoa, this beautiful thing just popped up, and there's painters and singers, and it's amazing. And just let that be enough. I think so much of the time we do have so many questions. I'm like, how, what, who? And it's really, it says something to just be able to come and like be in awe for 2 hours, you know?
And we have some purely secular events, and then we have events. We're clearly a Christian organization, but we're very careful with our language so that people outside the faith can be curious and come in. And so we have one event is called Magic City Storytellers, and we have 2 singer-songwriters, 2 poets, and 2 writers that come together, and we just allow them to speak because, you know, just the voices of Birmingham. And it's a secular, no agenda or hidden agenda, and often those artists come up to us afterwards and go, why'd you do that? I mean, that was great for me, but, and for us, that's the definition of grace. Like, we don't have to answer that. There's no, there's no hidden agenda other than relational, and that we want to affirm their gift. So, that's part of it. I'd love to ask you kind of specifically some of what's most encouraging and discouraging for you in your specific art form, and that can relate to your also as a Christian or just as an artist.
Gosh, I have a lot of thoughts about that. I think what's most encouraging to me as an artist right now, especially in the theater world, is that the landscape is changing, and COVID really, I think it was a blessing and like a hard wake-up call for a lot of groups, and like especially the commercial theater structure is changing in terms of who's in power and who's making the decisions and what kind of stories we're seeing told and who gets to be in those stories and, you know, who can play what. We're seeing that change a lot, and so I'm really encouraged in that. I'm a firm believer that it's important that we see stories that are not just windows into other people's lived experiences, but mirrors of our own. And I think there are many more stories that are offering mirror experiences to people, especially young people. As someone who teaches a lot, I don't want my kids to only hear about plays and musicals that they can't relate to at all, by playwrights that don't look like them or are from a place like them, where they're from. So I think about that a lot as a positive, and I think it's going to continue to grow. I mean, I mentioned earlier I work in the disability inclusion field as well, and like I still struggle in that because that's the least, folks with disabilities are the least represented in the arts, period, like the end. And even when they are represented on stage, most of the time they're played by non-disabled actors, which is a big problem. But that's still, it's one of those things that it's getting better, but it's extremely discouraging because it's the last group of people that gets a seat at any inclusion table. Like, we don't think about folks with disabilities, and disability doesn't care what you look like, where you're from, who your family, like, it just doesn't care. So that, I think, is where I'm discouraged. And then another thing I would say is, you know, I was at a recent retreat with social justice folks who were church social justice folks, and a lot of them were still Christians but weren't going to church because they felt that the church was, you know, a place that intends to be so inclusive. It still is extremely exclusive in a lot of ways, and so it's funny. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, but you're with theater people all the time, you know?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but there's very few of them go to church because they felt that they've been excluded." And so I struggle. Luckily, I feel like I go to a very welcoming church, but I struggle with like the capital C church in terms of like saying that like all are welcome, but not really meaning it. So it's a light topic.
I can see why you're the perfect advocate. You know, when I think about when I hear you speak, I kind of want to hear more about it. So, I mean, yeah, from your part. Thank you. I think for me, what's most encouraging, just with my own work, you'd say, you know, I feel like creating, I mean, you guys are all creatives, or at least you care about artists of different kinds. And I think I love the opportunity to respond to life, and I love to respond to the goodness of God, or I love to respond to the hard things, or to this conversation we're having. I'm sure I'll have thoughts and I'll want to respond some way, usually creatively, but it might mean just cooking a dinner that I think is pretty and lighting a candle. You know, I respond that
always
way.
a candle, yeah.
Always a candle. But I mean, if I get a chance to respond with paint, I'm grateful. I have a studio at home, and so as I, you know, obviously the pandemic changed a lot of things, but as doors open, I have opportunity at home to go in a studio and respond. And I think one thing that encourages me so much now as the world opens up again is a chance to start sharing my work with other people. And I was reminded of that this weekend, just to have a chance to go out and have a show and to actually engage with people and be reminded that our work is not just for ourselves. I mean, there's a place for private work, but there's also a place where you engage with someone else in their story. And I love God's big place in that, you know, that He's already connected your heart. He's gone before you. He's connected you with somebody who needs to read what you wrote or hear what you sang or said or see my painting or whatever. And you think that we don't know the big story. And we were just talking about this earlier. If we just respond in small, faithful ways with what's right in front of us, that sometimes, you know, personally, I'm encouraged just to see the miracle of a small connection that God before time ordained, and we just have a chance to be a part of it because we were obedient to respond in faith and make a brush stroke or write a word down or something. So, so I'm encouraged with that. I think most discouraging, I think, would be lack of opportunity. You know, all of the disconnection during the pandemic, y'all probably all say the same, has been really discouraging for me personally, just because it's like I've forgotten. I've been looking at the world kind of like one of those what do you call it, like a carousel thing in a playground that's like metal and it just spins really
Mhm.
fast.
Yeah, I love
I keep
those.
thinking, how do you, I mean, it's just like you're not quite sure where to grab hold because it's moving so fast. And that's how I'm feeling right now about life. Like, if it's starting to spin, like, do I even want to get on? And am I even made for that?
Yeah.
You know, whether it comes to using your voice or engaging in a certain way, you know, and so I think discouraging is just not really, I'm not really sure anymore where to grab hold or if I'm supposed to. But this man came up to me, again, going back to encouragement. I love encouragement more than discouragement. This producer guy was in the same place where I was having the show this weekend, and he came up to me and we just started engaging, and I thought it was hope for all of us. He had written this song that he's looking for someone to take on and you know, take it to the next level or whatever. He was a country producer, but it was called The Year the Music Died. And so the play on that, the day the music died, but the bridge or the chorus said, just like Lazarus in the Bible, we will rise again. And I thought, I mean, I need to hear this song, and I think we all need to hear this song as artists, because it's been a really discouraging time. And so, I don't know, I just think the encouragement is that we're not alone, because we're all longing for connection and a way to respond to the love of God and the needs in the world, you know, so anyway.
That sounds great. And I'd love to hear too, since y'all are artists, writers, I'm a writer as well, so there's lots of discouragements with, you know, and for me, my story was, I was creative as well, just total, and then the same kind of thing, like, how am I going to be most accepted in the church? Well, I'll write Bible curriculum and I'll teach, and, you know, so, which was good, and it was part of the calling, but fiction and things like that. So, you know, there's encouragement and discouragements, like the courage to do anything, you never regret it. And then man, this is a competitive world, and self-doubts and things like that. So those would be for me, but we would love, I mean, we have about 15 minutes left, and I have one more question for them, but I'd love to engage, because each of you is an artist. I'd love to find out from you as well what's been encouraging, discouraging, or even within the connection with the church context of that.
I'll start.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start with the bad and then end with the good.
Yeah.
Something discouraging, one, just as a young woman, African American,
Mhm.
like all of that together, there's not a lot of representation, and not a lot of people want to take that step into having that, I guess, leadership. And so it's very different being in like the field of music and church together, and being able to find a space that I don't just feel like I'm being a paid singer, or like,
Yeah.
and so it's there's not many chances, unfortunately, of where I'm able to step in front of the congregation and do something, and people aren't like on edge of like, is she gonna say something? Is she gonna do something? Is this gonna be different than our normal like worship experience type of deal? I haven't experienced that like horribly like myself, but I've seen it with several peers and friends in the past. And so I do think that Birmingham, I'm from Tennessee, Birmingham has a little more, surprisingly, opportunity with just allowing the reins to be let go in some spaces, whereas in Tennessee that was not the case. It was very rare that a female was able to step up and lead a song. Like,
Yeah.
So that's, I guess I would say, the discouragement in my field. Encouragement is that people are starting to listen to the younger generation of their ideas, their hopes, their dreams, because I think we all see that there is a disconnect within the church where, especially after COVID, we're not seeing many people coming back to church. Like, people are just chilling at home watching it on TV or something. And so just getting input from people who are the ones that are sitting at home and like, why aren't you here? And like, what can we do to get you here? So I guess it's a double-edged sword in a sense of like, my input is valid, but it's also not fully valid.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, valid but not fully valid. I like that. I write about events in places that have never existed,
Yeah.
will likely never exist, about people who don't exist. And yet, I got started in writing, looking for a place to serve, looking for a way to imitate our Lord. And I was like, well, parables. I could write fiction. I've been writing fiction since the 4th grade. I could do that. And then you tell people in church, and you say, oh, I want to tell stories. Oh, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Have you read this? Read the book? Have you?
It's right there.
So yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's very discouraging to hear these proclamations of we accept everyone, of oh that's a really, but then at the same time it's that's really neat.
Yeah.
For what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, it's cute. Okay, and so like you're saying, I think we all maybe feel a little bit like Frodo after talking to Gandalf, of looking down the road going,
Yeah.
all right, man. And so I think that's kind of the encouragement in and of itself too, though, is that's our journey.
Yeah.
Like, we know as artists that if we don't paint or we don't write or we don't sing, it's not going to get done.
Mhm.
So the strange encouragement is looking down that road and going, yeah, let's do it.
Mhm.
Or at least that's my encouragement.
That's not my phone.
I know,
know.
and it's not mine, yeah, I know.
Like, that's like the phone of a giant.
I know, that's what I,
Yeah, it seems like it's coming from the sound.
I know.
It's okay.
I
Maybe
think
it
so.
doesn't like what we're saying.
I don't know, and I think, I've heard the siren system here before, and it would be larger, so.
Well, yes.
So anyways, anything else at either?
It's a tornado watch, I bet.
Oh, no.
I bet that's what it is, because it came up on my phone.
Did it?
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting.
I'm
Just-
driving home tomorrow.
We're like in a basement or something.
Yeah, we're
I
fine.
think we're okay.
Okay.
That, I mean, but if you, I don't know if you feel like it would be good to leave, let us know. Or maybe we'll
I
stay
think
here
we're
forever.
safe in here.
Actually, to walk from here, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we gotta go.
I think this
good.
would be good, so.
I can say that a lot of what you're feeling as a writer and as a musician and things, I am not a big deal, but to some people, I'm starting to be a big deal. And an artist, that's unusual and weird to feel that, but your hometown, you are never a hero. You know, nothing
Right.
good ever comes from Nazareth. And I've sold books in just about every state in the United States and overseas. And I have people, my column was syndicated in New York and Michigan, and so I was at a concert of 5,000 people and someone came up and recognized me, oh, I read your blog. I'm like, oh my God. But people close to you will always treat you like the little kid that they know. And I had a lady in Fairhope tell me I was speaking to the writers group. Well, all the writers think they know more than me because they've been doing it longer.
Sure.
And suddenly I have books and they don't. And so one lady raised her hand and she said, I know why you don't get any respect. And I was like, excuse me?
Hello?
She said, it's because we knew you when you were only, or she said, just a mother. And I thought, well, that's just so offensive on about 10 different But
Not
but that's what you're getting, is they're holding, don't let the local aunts and uncles and cousins and next door neighbors that have known you forever tell you that you can't be successful and reach a bigger audience. And it's not about being famous to me, it's about reaching
Right.
people. And it's not about making money, because we all know artists don't make a lot of money. I mean, unless, I work with Rick Bragg sometimes, and, yeah, okay, he makes a lot of money, Fannie Flagg makes a lot of money. We were not that way. We're doing it because God calls us to do it, and it's our passion, and it makes us feel worshipful to use that passion. So when we reach more people, it makes us happy, but that's not even the goal. The goal is to serve God and glorify Him through what we do. So don't let the local people, you know,
Beat you down.
thump you
The
down.
haters.
Yeah, hold you back. Yeah, that's
Oh.
just their words.
And
Someday
Esther- yeah.
someone from Michigan will recognize your work. I saw this in the airport and I love it, you know,
Yeah.
so.
That sounds great. Esther, anything from your standpoint as a musician?
Oh, yeah, musician, and, I mean, I didn't share earlier, but I as a program manager of an initiative that works with artists and, musicians and songwriters, I think, making space for that kind of radical hospitality that you were sharing about, I think really resonated with me, that was very encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the ways that I have experienced church wanting more of a cookie cutter, how music should be sounding in worship, and 4 chords, that's it.
No.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, like do we need to become so simplistic in our ways when God is God full of mystery and complexity, and there's so much beauty in the diversity of how He's created this world, and also how He created music to be and allows musicians and artists to explore that creativity.
Yeah.
And so, I think for me, just I think there's always another way to explore who God is through the arts, music. So that's what I'm.
Yeah,
excited.
that's fascinating.
Well,
That's good.
And to sort of connect both things, you were mentioning how stereotypical or cookie cutter it was in Nashville. And maybe you've encountered this in your writing as well, genre is, seems to be the paramount for writing and song and theater and art, and so that, well, we know this is sold. So if you look like this, obviously you're going to sell it, and we're going to make more money. And so, yeah, I agree with you. That's one of those things I think we're fighting is genre definement.
Yeah, and that can go categorizing, labeling people, and even your art form. We just have 5 minutes, but if either of you has a advice for churches on how to engage with artists, it's just a thought. I think we've talked through that, but if there's anything else that you feel that churches can do to become more open to the artist.
Well, I think this was a great segue. Patience and time, the relationship. Relationships take time and space, and so I was just thinking about what she was just sharing with no agenda. I mean, I feel like that's where we found a sweet spot, but just to encourage, I think, churches just to be open to relationship and see where it goes, which is in the realm of mystery. But I feel like so many of our sweet, I mean, it's not within the church, but we are a bridge between the city and the church, but so many of our sweet times and what I would consider a relational victory have been times where we've lingered long after an event or a dinner, and somebody who's been at the table has said, I don't believe in that Jesus stuff, right? And we're like, yeah, we get it, but we're still friends. And learning more about their family or their broken marriage or their, whatever, I feel like to me that is what I would consider progress. I mean, and relationship is what we're here for. And so I think the same to the church. I just think time and space and patience and willingness to sit in the mystery a little bit and just champion that part of God's heart and celebrate that.
Well, and I think so much of, now being like literally as a full-time job, I'm just supposed to engage the community, right, for the theater. And I love what I do. But it takes to form any new partnership, and I think like when artists and churches are meeting, it's a partnership, or hopefully, right? And to form any partnership, it takes a commitment to showing up. If I want students from a school system that has no arts programming to come to the arts campus. It's not going to happen unless I'm going to their school all the time and like seeing if this is even something they want, or seeing what they do want, or just listening to what their dreams are and what their goals are. I think in the same way, churches and folks from churches need to just go to Magic City Art Connection, need to go to the symphony, need to go and show up and get to know the people who are creating. And it's showing up, and it's relational, and it's about taking that time to just go and be present with artists. Again, I think so many artists have been have such a complicated relationship with faith, and so it's going to take a lot of intentional showing up to repair that. And again, showing up without an agenda, but just showing up with a posture of presence and love.
Both Allie B and Gina need to fly right at 2 because they're both supposed to be in meetings. So so what I might do is just close in prayer, but I can hang around for a little bit longer if y'all want to talk about anything or get some connections. I'd love to do that. But I'd love to pray through one of the verses, like Revelations is our picture of bringing heaven down to Birmingham, but also for people that don't, we often have churches that don't know where to put us, and they don't even know what, they don't know the term of common good that much. It seems very suspicious to them. So Jeremiah speaks of it, and if we consider ourselves just as, sometimes we're all exiles in a sense, and we've been planted in a certain place. How can we bring shalom and flourishing through our art form and our lives and our loves together? So I'm just going to pray this. Do good things for the city where I sent you as captives. Pray to the Lord. Oh Lord, we pray to you for the city in which you are living, each of your cities that you live in. If there is peace, if there is shalom in that city, you will also have peace. Lord, we just pray that we could be shalom makers in our art forms within the church and within the cities and places that we live. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you. I'm sorry to fly.